Okay. This is going to be a bit rambling, I'm afraid, because I haven't got a PowerPoint where I'm going stage through stage, so I'll just go through some ideas that are the background of what I've done here. This is Paralogical, which is a website that I've created as a vehicle for, say, 22 photographs. There's more than that, but I've only put them there now. It was essentially first conceived of as a sort of walking oracle based on one of the modules from the MA where we walk around and we were given a piece of paper and it's like turn left or read the sign. My idea was that we'd have some cards with instructions on, and you'd shuffle them at various points and ask a question and interact in a psychogeographic way with the landscape, finding an answer via this. And I went quite far down that road, and I did it myself quite a lot while I was doing it, but the answer kept coming back that it wasn't the right thing to do. I wasn't really being authentic with it. It isn't what I wanted to do, and I don't think I should have done it. But I didn't really listen to that. I tried to make an app, which kind of I did do, but it went a bit wrong. So I had a kind of like a little bit of a crisis about it, and then I thought, well, maybe I'll make a kind of oracle and ask. And so what I did was I gathered together some sayings from Sufis, various mystical Middle East things, because that's what I'm into, and made some cards and went through sort of various processes that I'd worked out. And it turned out that I should do this, make a website with some photographs, because before, in another life, actually, I've did some photography and painting over the photograph. And actually, that's what these techniques are. I'll show a bit about it. Each one of these photographs is actually a black and white photograph. And what I would do was photograph it, develop it in the darkroom, and then maybe get 10, 20 copies and paint over them with some special paint. And so they're actually all black and white, but they're colorized in different ways. So what I wanted to do was to revisit that and redo it, which is actually kind of what I did, really. But I still wanted to maintain the oracle part of it, because that seems to me an integral part of how I arrived at the point. So I was kind of researching that, and I don't know if any of you are familiar with, I saw this called Tarot as Colour. It's a surrealistic tarot by, there's a link to it somewhere. I've forgotten the guy's name. Oh yeah, Tarquin. He just had various different colours where he would just paint and splash colours. It was not a figurative tarot or anything like that at all, but it was a tarot, but more of an intuitive way. So, one card might be kind of just a deep, vibrant red, and you're interacting with that card just like you would with the tower, say. And the whole of it's like that. But it's very surrealistic and deconstructionist, which is kind of what I wanted to do, but not in such a way as to relate these photographs to the tarot. I want a different name. So, for example, let's have a look at this one. This is, I've called it Divergence, but originally it was the tower, number 16. It has got a reference to it because there's a tower there, but they're not all as explicit as that. The reason I think this is divergent, I could show you the black and white one of this before it's painted, is because I won't bore you with the process of how I arrived at these sayings, but they are Middle Eastern sayings. So this one is, what do I sing and what does my tambourine sing? And there's an idea there of a kind of a conflict. And the reason this happened to me was because I'd used a version of this, which was slightly different colours. This is actually a fresco that I found in a abandoned house in Florence, and it's in much worse condition than that. You can see some of the wall is rotting around here, and it's very, very kind of brown, really. But these two figures, they struck me as interesting, and I've used various iterations of it. And for one web client, they wanted something that was harmonious and dancing and uniting, and I did a few promos with this in various different colours. And they rejected it. And they said no. And I said, why? And they said, because it's too aggressive and violent, they're just clearly fighting. But I don't get that at all. I mean, And that's interesting to me because I don't think there is a right or wrong about it. But to me, that's the last thing to do. So it's in keeping, I think, also with the overall effect that I want of the site, which is a sort of, not an ambiguity or an ambivalence, but a reflection where you could view things in any number of ways. So a saying like that might mean one thing to you one day and another thing another day, or to two different people mean opposite things and yet still be valid for that person. That is what I'm going for with all of this, really, because I've made an oracle too. I'll get to that in a minute. These are some. This is actually one that I've left deliberately black and white before colorizing it. It's not that I didn't have time. There's a reason why I want it like that. Because I've been on a kind of journey with this MA, which is resulted in a kind of a deconstruction, really. And I was thinking earlier, before I came here, about a Sufi story, and I was thinking I should have included it on these cards, but I didn't do. And I said, it's too late now. And the story is, and it's also a Zen story too, I think, because a lot of stories like this are universal. That, I think somebody tells it of Suzuki as well. Somebody's got a bowl of tea and he's asking someone else for more knowledge, and, you know, oh master, can you give me wisdom? And the master just pours the tea into the cup and just keeps pouring, and it's overflowing and overflowing, and he won't stop pouring. And he says, what are you doing, what are you doing? He says, well, you're like the cup. You need to empty the cup before you can be filled. That's what I was thinking of putting there. And with Nyara's thing this morning, looking into the water bowl, that's exactly what I thought. It was a nice synchronicity, because I thought, I should have put it there after all, because that's what this is about, really, for me. As a process, I'm emptying my vessel. I'm not actually putting anything more into it. And I got that impression also underlined to me earlier, because these presentations have been all great and amazing, and it's where people are coming from, and I think, I wish I was there, but I'm not. I'm in the stage before where I'm just emptying and divesting myself, and it's not such a great place to be sometimes, because you have to learn to trust it. And this is part of that process for me, a kind of a learning to trust. That's why I want it to be an oracle, because it can give you some advice. It's all about where I feel that I am heading, but I can't head there yet because I haven't got rid of enough baggage, if you like. That's the same. And this is something that I've developed in a way with these things to help me through that period, because I left Britain about 20 years ago and I was like, I'm never coming back, and I was a reason for this, and I had a few businesses and I sold them to get the money to go, and a lot of my customers would say, don't do it. No, I'm going to do it. I know what I'm doing. It's going to be great. And it wasn't great, really, so much. But I kept pretending it wasn't, pretending it was. And then, like a year or two ago, I came to the period where, a point where I realised, I've got to face up to the fact that this isn't working, and I've just got to go back, because I shouldn't have gone. I admitted it. And I've come back here, and I went on the MA, and that's part of it, and that's very synchronistic too, but I won't go into that. And it's been quite a hard journey divesting myself of that, because in a way I've come back to not much, and I'm still getting less. I had a luxury apartment with my own office and 3 or 4 other rooms, and now I don't have that. It's tough, but it's the right thing, and I know that. But you have to trust, and part of that trust is to. This isn't the only thing that I can solve, but it's something that I've worked out. And so when I feel like I'll shuffle cards, I don't do it necessarily here. This is an iteration of it, and there's many more sayings than are there. I might just shuffle them, and I get it, and I think about it in one way, I think about it in another way, and it helps me realise that you have to go back sometimes to go forward in the maze. So I'll show you some more of them. They're related to, let's look at this one, patience. I've called this one the lovers, but that's only because there's 2 of them, and they're not really, because they're little kids, and I think they're two sisters actually. That's in Aswan on the dock. It's a black and white picture, but painted and colorized like this, but by hand, not in Photoshop or anything like that. It's going to be too easy. And this, a lot of these are from Egypt too, actually. It's just sayings that I like. They're not necessarily related per se, but they're related in my own mind, where I felt, yes, that saying relates to that photograph. Because there's about 100 of these photographs, and I've just chosen 20, and I chose 20 sayings to go with them. There may not be a link to anyone else that is obvious, but to me, there is. There's no purpose in hammering cold iron. You know, I like that one sometimes when I'm thinking, oh my God, what have I done? You know, because it's like helps you move on a bit. Or the fruit of timidity is neither gain nor loss. You know, I think in my past kind of inauthentic way, I was pretending a lot. Yeah, I'm gaining, but no, you know, I was very timid and it's got to take the bold step. But like I say, it may not be ostensibly related, but it is to me. And I've put some notes with some of them. I won't take you through all of them.
Would you mind clicking on silence, please?
Yeah, sure. That is actually a bar in Lisbon. I don't know if you know it. Yeah, right now. I kind of related this a bit to it's two different photographs juxtaposed. There's a little bit of colouring, but not really much. I like it because of this sort of mythic scene, and I've related it to the Fool, I think. Not for any particular reason, though, because I'm into holy fools and wise fools, and that guy looks both. And the Fool has a dog, too. So there's a dog. I mean, I don't actually, when that photograph originated, none of these photos, I should say, are tailored to the saying or tailored to the card or tailored to the word. They just existed as photographs in their own right without any form of relation to any of this. So I've just chosen which ones I liked and included them. But yeah, this seems like a mythic scene which I quite liked, and I don't know who that guy is. It's just somebody in the bar. Yeah, this is a good thing. The answer to a fool is silence, which you could read two ways. Because if somebody's being foolish, you could ignore them and say nothing, and that's their answer. Or you could give them an answer, but it could be just as good as silence if they're being foolish about it. There's many more ways you can see it than that as well. It's not necessarily pejorative, because sometimes you're the fool, or sometimes the fool isn't the fool, but they're wise. And no answer is in itself an answer, because sometimes, for me, I'm desperate for an answer for something in my situation, and there isn't one, you know, and its silence comes back, and that sometimes you tend to, oh no, silence, it's gone wrong. Maybe no, it hasn't. Maybe that's what it should be at that point. You know, sometimes I think of that. There's that saying that the garden is ready when there's nothing left to take out. And I think that is part of sometimes we forget that in some sort of spiritual quest, where you know, it's all about adding, if I gain this, if I do this. But actually there's a lot of taking out that needs to be done too, I think. For me, anyway. But that's where I'm at right now. So that's silence, because that guy was being really silent too. But he's a character. That's in Lisbon. Yeah, I'll show you another one that I quite... In a way, this one is foundational. This one is interesting too. It's the turtle, which I've related to the Strength tarot card. That turtle is really only about that. It's a real turtle, I think it's a cherubim. I'm a sort of massive geeky fan of Stephen King. He's got a motif of a turtle in his Dark Tower series. And it's a reference where the turtle carries the world on his back, and what he does, that includes the strength. It reminds me of a quote of Robert Anton Wilson, who I think was debating with some old lady, and she was saying, "Oh, the turtle carries the world on his back," and he's saying, "Well, what's underneath the turtle then?" He says, "Well, it's another turtle." "Yeah, but what about that? Another turtle." And then she says, "But yeah, but keep going." And she says, "Well, it's no good. It's turtles, turtles, turtles all the way down." And it kind of is, isn't it? You know, sometimes
The video becomes very wobbly at this point.
that's what it is. It's turtles. Which also, I think, is quite interesting because I've put there some notes. You can click on notes and it tells you a bit more about them. And this one is, I was thinking about this during a lecture, and Jeffrey who's not here, unfortunately, was talking about the story of the Buddha. And this is the story, you probably know it, and those of you who were in the group at the time said that. Imagine that the whole earth was covered with water, and that a man were to throw a yoke with a hole into the water. I can't see. Blown by the wind, that yoke would drift north, south, east, and west. Now suppose that once in 100 years a blind turtle were to rise to the surface. What would be the chances of that turtle putting his head through the hole in the yoke as he rose to the surface once in 100 years? It would be very unlikely, Lord, says one of the Buddha's disciples. Well, it is just as unlikely that one will be born as a human being. It is just as unlikely that a Tathagata, a noble one, a fully enlightened Buddha, should appear in the world. And it is just as unlikely that the Dharma and the disciple of Tathagata should be proclaimed. But now you have been born a human, a Tathagata has appeared and a Dharma has been proclaimed. Therefore strive to realise the Four Noble Truths, which is great story. And Jeffrey kind of pinned it by saying, imagine how lucky you are to be on the MA. Which, that's how unlikely it is that you can find your way. And I agree, we should be grateful for that. But I'm a Fortean, so I can also see that given a yoke with a hole in it and one turtle and millions of miles of ocean, then it's almost inevitable that that turtle will go through the ring. It's got to happen at a time of significance for you. And it doesn't mean anything either, because that's a typical Fortean motif. Someone loses a wedding ring and, 20 years later they buy a fish from the fishmonger and there it is in the fish's stomach. So, yeah, that kind of is the two ways also that you can look at it. And neither's right or wrong. You just take what you can get, or what is useful to you at that time. And I like turtle. So I put it there. But this is a tiny turtle, but it looks big, and he's probably quite strong though also. Painted. Where's they all are? Do some more. This one, again, this is the same kind of theme. This guy is in Aswan, and most people think he's Muslim, but he's a Christian Copt, and he's really quite a wise guy. But it says in Arabic Allah behind his head, but he kind of, it's not really a meditation cell as such, but he's there a lot. I didn't colorise this because I didn't really feel I could do it justice, but out of the photo here, I've clipped it because there's two reasons. There's a horrible metal construction that spoils the aesthetic of it about here, but also there's a woman friend who is kind of like this. But the thing about that is that was their first meeting, and she eventually ended up marrying this guy. And that is a look now, which is quite amazing, I thought, to have the first photo when they meet, and especially where she's going at that. But I didn't put it there because didn't want to give her internet fame. But it's about appearances as well, because it doesn't really make any sense to you guys, but if you knew her, she would be the last person that you could ever possibly think would marry a guy.
Who's the woman behind him? Is it the woman that's in front of him caught behind him? So you can see the legs and the body. Yeah, and her arms hanging down.
Yeah.
And
God, I've never noticed.
can you see it?
I can see it.
Yeah.
Where's that? Yeah.
She's standing about three pages notes back.
Hi.
So
Yes.
did you do that?
What did I
Did
do?
you put that woman in
No.
with your painting?
No. It's just a
That is
photograph.
definitely. That's very strange.
I've never noticed it though.
It's like, yeah, it's now line.
Actually on the wall.
She's slightly leaning towards the floor.
She's got a sort of stance here.
Yeah, it's like this.
It's here, sort of the head, shoulders.
Yeah,
Yes.
the legs are very here.
She's got a
Bizarre. But there isn't any. I can see it now, but there's no one there.
That's amazing. You might have captured a spirit photograph there.
It's quite a wide stance.
Amazing.
Does it look like how the woman was looking? Was
No,
it complete,
not
so it's
at all.
completely different? So it's somebody else. Someone's crept in there.
I'll find in a minute on my other computer. I've got the original of this. This is like a JPEG that's cut down, so with the one there, so I can look at it. This is some sort of artifact. I mean, this is graffiti.
But the feet are still
Yeah.
The feet.
Yeah.
And she has a coat.
They're at least a foot from the wall.
Yeah.
Hmm. Weird.
Quite a conversion.
This is some spirit photography.
Yes. I think so.
Yes, some drapes, something around your neck. The thing in your head maybe that you touch.
Yeah. Okay, tell you what we can do. This is actually not one that's photographed or colorized at all. It's just I like the photo because it's the inside of a sort of mosque I like, but that isn't. Okay, this I did try to keep the idea of the oracle. Hopefully this works. The idea is you type a question in and it suggests one. So who's got a question? You can do that. See if it.
Who is the lady in the photograph?
I doubt if it's gonna. Weird if it comes up with that.
Yes, it's weird.
It's another lady.
It's another person.
Can you see anyone there?
Yeah.
Where?
In the photo. On the wall.
Yeah. That's a painting. That is a real painting. Yeah.
What's the title of this one? Sorry.
Emptiness.
Wow, that's the answer.
Every stick has two ends.
Yeah. You can't hit two targets with one arrow.
Is that what the answer is?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's an interesting answer.
The algorithm might need tweaking, but
This is fascinating. Can I ask what sort of paint that you used?
Yeah.
Is it on gloss photographs?
yeah, it is. It's just on it.
Okay, so what sort of paint is
It's like if I can find you the name of it. It's kind of like an acrylic, really, but you can water it down. Yeah, it's
Excuse me.
Can't be expensive. So I didn't do that one. Some of these, I don't know. I mean, I just went a bit with intuition. I didn't really feel like I could do that, or maybe I just feel that I don't have what is needed to do it. Some of them aren't like that. Some of them are more collages, really. I should actually. That one is not. Yeah. Exactly. That's not that isn't painted actually. There's 2 or 3 that aren't. That's just, I put that there because in Barcelona they have a kind of, like Hastings, they have this Jack in the Green thing. They have a similar thing, but it's kind of slightly more paganistic. Well, no, I mean you can't be slightly more paganistic than Hastings, but slightly more. What's the word for it? Anti-church. This guy, well, he's the devil, obviously, and this is when I was toying with the idea of the tarot, and this would have been the devil card. I thought I could make it, but this is just one that I took in colour. I was going to make it into black and white and then paint it. I thought that's just cheating, really. Just leave it as it is. But it's a remnant of the tarot idea, because he's obviously the devil. A snake's child is precious to the snake, which is kind of like, I've got a bit of a thing for sort of heterodox religion, not in a sort of antithetical way, because I don't really believe that opposing things is necessarily the way to go. I think there's this idea of paralogical. Actually, it was going to be originally about paratheology, which is a kind of, I suppose a nascent idea that you can, para means to run alongside of. So you could have a reading of a topic, in this case theology, that runs alongside Christianity, but is counter to Christianity, but includes Christianity. So this fits in with the idea of looking at things from 2 opposing ends, but not either or. It's kind of fitting in with that idea of Korban, that, and thought especially, the intermediate space in between. If you don't go for either or, you don't go for yes or you don't go for no, and you sit there, there's a space in between that is a kind of intermediate space. I think Fort said something along the lines of, I can conceive of nothing in religion or philosophy that isn't merely the fashionable thing to wear for a while. And when he felt like it, he would be one side, and then he could counter it with another, or be neither. It isn't. And that's what I think paratheology does. It needs developing as a sort of discipline, I think, because it's all about Jesus was an astronaut or an alien, and I haven't got much time for that. I think you can go deeper in a more heterodox way and still be Christian, which is, or even, accept the devil is that in a sense, because in an Islamic sense, the devil is the first true monotheist, because his crime in Islam is that God made Adam and got all the angels to bow down to Adam. And when it came to Iblis, who is a jinn actually, he's not really a devil as such, he refused to bow down, because he said, I won't bow down to anything other than you, God. And God said, well, you disobeyed me, because there's a contradiction there. Even though I've told you to do something you shouldn't do, and you've refused to do it, you've still disobeyed me by not doing it. So that was his crime. But that is an ambivalence, I think, that's inherent in that concept, which I've always quite liked, because I was brought up as a Christian, and I kind of really went against it, and I went into Islam quite heavily. But I'm getting back into it, as my deconstruction progresses. I think you can't really, or I can't, escape from what I am. I've been trying to do that for a long time. So I've built up this not false, but inauthentic, let's say, way of being, and now it needs a bit of deconstructing, and so this is, again, part of that. So, could do, this again is the, which is quite astrological, I think. This is again that day in Barcelona. I haven't colorised this, but obviously the sun and the moon. And that was, I think, I was going to relate this to the sun tarot card. These are people in there, by the way. These are kind of massive heads, and they stand in a kind of costume. It looked a bit like the costume that Sanao made as his scarecrow, but they put this big mask on the top. And they wander around like that. They're giants. And there's a lot of astrological symbolism in that day that they have.
Tarquin, what's the festival again?
This is Saint Juan, actually. It would have been like yesterday, I think. Then they had the Nit de Saint Juan, which is like the night celebrating the longest night, where everybody stays up. And I think in Barcelona it's kind of pretty toned down. I mean, it still has the symbols, but if you get further north into Catalonia, there's kind of some full-on witchiness going on, actually. Really interesting. But yeah, and that's the sun card, or it could have been a moon. I wanted